London's Love, Care, and Share Support Group. Health, physical, mental, social, and spiritual. And this is London, and I have a very special guest here in our studios. This is a special show. This is London's Love, Care, and Share. You know, it's a health support group. And I have Mr. Mel Mills. How are you?
I'm great. I'm grateful to be here.
And I'm so happy that you had time to come to see us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me on.
It's my pleasure. Now, I would like to get started, and can you just get a little background about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I was raised in Detroit. I live in East Point now. I am a man of faith, the disciple that Jesus loved. We talk about that in the Bible a lot. I am a entrepreneur, investor, digital communications and marketing strategist, and a speaker and minister. So those are just some of the hats I wear and kind of worlds I play in and things I do.
Wow, it is a lot. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, it's not always each of those every day.
I know,
yeah. Cycle them out.
I'm kind of in those shoes, but still, it's a lot.
Yeah,
But you know, sometimes when you God bless you with many gifts, and they're all used at certain times or
That's right.
whatever.
We got to be able to pivot. We got to be able to go into different worlds and take advantage of different streams and opportunities and things of that nature. So
It's a blessing, though,
it is.
to be that way.
It is. It is.
So that's another reason why that we asked you on the set. We have another show. You may see him on Backstage from the Inside Out because this gentleman, and we hope to have people on that can tell you some things on the inside that about life, and then let you know how they got to where they are today. So you would be an inspiration to many, many, many people.
I hope so. I mean, I think we're all going to have to give an account for our life, and when my life is over, I want to be able to look back and say, hey, that was worth it. I made an impact. I made a difference, and Jesus was pleased. And so, very aware that time is short. We're recording this right now, just off the heels of Kobe Bryant's passing.
Oh, yes.
It's kind of shaken
the
community, especially the black community.
Yes.
And, deaths happen every day, obviously, but, there are some that, or all of them really just kind of make you stop and, reevaluate how precious life is.
It is.
So it's a good reminder for all of us, and it's been one for me, too.
It is a shaker upper. I at this point, I'm still in disbelief. I know it happened, but it hasn't set yet. It hasn't set.
Yeah.
And I think it's like that for a lot of people. But we have you here today, as I said, as an inspiration, and with the age range that you're in, you can relate to just about everybody. We're talking about the teenagers, the young adults, the middle age, and even yet the more seasoned people. You can relate. And I know this myself because I've heard you talk before and minister and all those different things. So
Awesome.
I know that's why I was very glad when you accepted our invitation for you to come on and just talk about life, talk about you, talk about, and then of course in this we're looking for people to be inspired to want to move on.
Yeah. I'm a millennial, in case you didn't know, and I think one of the advantages of being a millennial is that we kind of came in this time period, mid to late 80s, 90s, where there was just kind of this transition of things, right? So we kind of got dropped in where we were going from the old school way to the new school way in terms of technology.
In between, right?
Yep. The previous generation coming out, new one coming in, and so you kind of in this in-between space.
So where does that leave you, though? Is that a good space? Is that a good place, though?
I think so, because it allows us, you were saying, to be able to relate.
Right.
It allows us to kind of be able to relate to, kind of have a taste of how things were, but to be in this place where we're not rejectful or rejecting, the new things. Right. And so you can relate to the older seasoned folks. You can relate to the Gen Z and the next one coming behind them. You're kind of in the middle, so you got a little bit of best of both.
Right. Before we get started, can you name those Generation Z? Right.
Yeah. So Z is Gen Z is here. They're now. They're the teens, actually kind of going into early to mid 20s, And there's actually another one right after that. I just read about it the other day.
Okay.
I don't remember it offhand. I think it's Alpha or something like
Mhm.
that. But then there's, of course, millennials, and then there's the Xers, and then there are the boomers.
Okay, so the Xers are what, like the 40ish?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the boomers is there after, and the boomers, that's it. Then the same, or is that it?
They're
Seniors.
probably, I'm sure there's some folks out here that were before the boomers' time.
Okay.
But in terms of who is kind of on the stage, so to speak, the boomers, the Xers, millennials, and the Zs,
And then now we have the alphas somewhere in there in between.
which are being born now.
Number one, huh?
Yeah,
Wow.
they're coming in now. They're dropping now.
Dropping in. Okay, so thank you for that. For those that really didn't know, now you got the info on that, because I know it could be confusing a little bit for some people. Some people, all we know is millennials, and all we know is the baby boomers.
Yeah.
Generation Z and all the rest of those, some people probably don't know which is which, but now we do.
Yeah, and even in getting to know them, I think that's one of the things that's missing from our dialogue today. Being, in conversations, certainly social media, we have that here today. We didn't back in the boomers' day and the X's day.
Right.
Even millennials, right? We didn't have social media growing up. Social media was created in 2004 in kind of the capacity it is now, and we were in college then, so we didn't necessarily grow up with it. But what's kind of missing, I think, from the dialogue today is just this ability to listen, to reason, to understand someone that is different than us.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that difference can be color and economic class and all these other things, but we see it a lot in differences in age.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a perception about boomers, there's a perception about millennials,
right.
Gen Z, and one of the things I think is missing that we could all kind of stop and pause and take a step back on is to listen a little more, and to listen with the intent not to speak but to understand.
Wow.
Because when you understand, what the issues are with that particular generation, or their quirks, or whatever it may be, you're able to relate to them more versus just, hey, you guys are dumb. That way, right?
And just
Or
make a
you're lazy.
decision and judge them, and that's it.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
speak on it that
don't get me
way.
wrong, there are certain characteristics, buying habits, spending habits, marketers know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
That mark a generation, but in terms of being able to cohabitate in the same space, the workplace, school, that kind of thing, I think we could do a lot better in just trying to understand each other through having dialogue and conversation, and not being so combative.
That'll help us to get along, is what you're saying.
To get along, yeah.
Even if you don't agree with it, at least you can, understand.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think our perceptions soften a little bit when we understand.
It does.
I was reading an article recently about a gentleman, I think he's not a boomer, but I think he's an Xer, and he recently went back to college, and he had read all this stuff about how millennials and Gen Z were snowflakes, right? This is the term they throw around, the snowflakes.
Okay.
They can't take anything, they're thin
Milk.
skinned, all this
No,
other
right away.
stuff.
Can't stand nothing. Huh?
Yep. And he said, shortly into his going to school at such an older age, he might even been a boomer, so I don't want to misquote, but his perspective was drastically changed because he was in the class, in the seat next to these Gen Zs
Mm-hmm.
and these millennials.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went in with this one perception, but when you're there with them every day, when you're reading alongside of them, studying alongside of them, testing alongside of them and so forth, his perception changed because he had to be in that same space. And yeah, he went in with some preconceptions, but they were changed. They were different than what he bought into from the narrative that we just kind of consume.
Which to me means that we can all learn from each other. Where we're with a millennial or a baby boomer or Generation Z, if we can talk together and understand each other, then we can also learn from each other.
I agree. I have for a long time been under the belief that there's something I can learn from everyone. I can learn something from the 1-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 20-year-old, the 90-year-old. You can put me in a room with anybody, and I can learn something from them. I may not always necessarily agree, but there's always something I can learn and take away from it.
That's a great way to to be able to have that frame of mind,
Mhm.
because that opens opportunities up for you and other things in your life if you can just open your mind to understand.
Yeah, and I think we're very, in a lot of cases, so I work in the social media world. That's the digital marketing communications strategist hat that I wear.
Mm.
And there's so much dialogue going on where we've just kind of closed our minds to any other ideas that are not our own or that we don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a recipe for conflict and a disaster. You can't cohabitate like that.
Right.
You have to be willing to open your mind to at least understand where other people are coming from. You don't always have to necessarily agree, but you should take the time to understand.
Amen to that. Now, can we get to the question about the self-esteem? Not self-esteem. I think we have so many things here that we want to talk about. We don't
Sure.
have enough time. But the one reason I want to talk to you for mental health, and want to talk about men and their situation and their mental health, because of society, the way that we perceive or set them up to be. Men try to live up to that standard.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't feel that men should cry, show any emotion, or even show any signs of weakness or confusion. And I find, that men are just like everybody else, like the men and the women. We all have emotional. We can have low self-esteem. We can want to cry. So I would like for you to talk a little bit about that from the men's mental health.
No, I think it's very important, and again, as we're recording this, we're coming off the heels of the Kobe Bryant passing, and there's been a lot of discussion about, just like with all the outpouring of love and support, been a lot of discussion about black men grieving and showing emotions. And, this is something my good friend Clarissa, she's a professional counselor, she talked about on the Word Restores radio show and
that the young lady?
podcast. Yep.
Okay.
And she talked about how, this holding in of emotion kind of goes back to the slavery days, in that, you had to be strong. You had to put that on. You could not, necessarily show weakness and things of that nature. And that's kind of, carried on. And so here we are. But the reality is, man or woman, you have emotions. And God gave them to us to be expressed. And, you're like any other vessel. If, you put pressure on it and you seal it, eventually it's going to explode.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, sometimes when that happens, and when it does, it's very tragic. You can let your emotions. There's a book called Emotions, Killer Emotions. And the book talks about how you can have the physical symptoms that manifest as a result of emotional damage and trauma that's held on to. And so it's not just an emotional thing, it affects you physically too. And so the notion that men can't express this is not 100% accurate. We do have a culture and people in the culture that kind of look at that as a negative, but we need to begin to kind of change that and say, hey, it is okay to cry, it is okay to feel emotion, it is okay to express yourself. Matter of fact, it's more than okay, it's healthy, it's necessary. Because when you don't, that emotion has to go somewhere, and you would rather be in control of it than not in control of it.
Right.
So it's showing up in your body as a sickness, or you damaging the relationships around you, be it friends, be it your children that you're going to raise. If you never learn to cope with your own emotions and manage those, you're going to leave a path of destruction. It's just inevitable.
So a lot of times when society puts it's like you build some type of facade up because you don't want to show that.
Yeah.
Right? But like you said, eventually, if you put a cap on it and there's a lot of pressure in it, it's going to eventually explode anyway.
Yeah. And I think we have a skewed image of what healthy masculinity is. We've bought into everything that the rap songs say, that the movies say that we should be. Well, what does the Word of God say? We see what the Word of God says about Jesus. I think Jesus was probably the most masculine male
Yes,
example that we can
yeah.
have. Jesus wept. He loved. He showed emotions. He had a lot of emotions, but he was not, even then, he was not this, timid figure that we make him today. He was strong. He didn't take any garbage, but he wasn't, reckless and mean and that kind of thing. And so there are examples of this. We need to get them and get back to them, but what is portrayed through media and like song and movies and things of that nature, that's not, we bought into a lie, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So now I'm going to ask the engineer back here, how much time have we been talking? We've been talking 17 minutes. Can we get a couple more minutes out of you?
Sure.
Okay, and I see that our other guest has came, and if he's showing up right there.
Okay.
But so in your life, can you tell me a little bit, like in your life, how did you come to be the gentleman that you are today? I mean, you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom, and I know, from hearing conversations that you've been through some things, and you were able to and blessed to overcome.
Yes.
Well, it puts you at a point where, somebody else can maybe learn from what you've been through. And so if they look at you today and they say, oh, he's strong, he's great, everything is great for him, he's successful.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't know where any of us came from.
Right.
So I'd like to know how, in your overcoming, how did you overcome to become the person you are today?
Well, it did not happen overnight, and there were certainly a lot of dark days. I had many bouts with depression, started in my teenage years. My father was in the service, and so I did not get to have him around a lot. And in hindsight today, looking back, I mean, I knew some of it then, but that hurt, right? That did more damage than I thought it was. And I had this longing, for fathering, and he was there, like he would visit. I mean, he's in the service though, so he wasn't necessarily living with us. My parents were divorced, and so I got to see him. When I got to see him, it was much better, certainly, than having no father. But it was always a void that I was trying to fill, and so it was out of that and other things. There was a lot of anger, a lot of confusion, a lot of anxiety, things that just began to snowball over the years. And so, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 sometime in 05, 06, after, some bad bouts with depression that kind of started through the teenage years. Really battled with suicide quite a bit. Was on medications for all of that stuff.
Wow.
And it was just a nightmare. Was in college, racked up a whole bunch of student loan debt, and so
more pressure,
right? And I was in a very competitive institution, and I mean, literally, it just kind of all came crashing in. Eventually, one day in 2007, and that was the day that I said, "Hey, I can't do this. I've been trying to do this without God." Was in a relationship at the time I shouldn't have been, that just kind of like doubled down on everything, and it all came crashing down. And I rededicated my life to the Lord. So I had gave my life to the Lord like much early on, but I wasn't living the life. We do the salvation prayer and all that, but I wasn't living the life. But that was the year 2007. I said no more, and from that day forward, though I haven't been perfect, I've put the Lord, at the center of my life, and that has been a constant. That's been a constant learning process, because that was not just okay, boom, done, everything goes away. No, but it's been better with Him than without Him. And there have been dark days with Him, and there have been hills and valleys. But I think that's the thing that I can always come back to, is that, and even now, that, man, when I say He's kept me, He has. When I didn't even know how to keep myself, He's been better to me than I've been to myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Woo! Now this is where we're going with all this. This could be on either program, because it's talking about just what you're talking about. That is like letting people know what happened on the inside of you and how you are today, but you're still giving God, you're recognizing God. So that's where actually everything leads you to, whether you're at church, on the job, no matter what you do, whatever profession that you have, is like you said, and I can say that too. If it weren't for God, it's much better with God. Because if I didn't have Him, would I even be here?
Yeah.
And that's for many of us. So for the last moment, could you highlight us with some inspirational something you want to say to the people, which you've already inspired many people already that will see this.
That's good.
By what you're saying, I just let them know that wherever they're at,
Yeah.
that they can make it out.
Yeah, I would just say exactly that it doesn't matter always how you start, but how you finish. And we don't always get a good start. There's even bumps between the start and the finish, but it matters how you finish. And if you have the Lord in your life, and He's the center of your life, and I do mean the center, not the front, the end, but He's the center, meaning He's a part of everything you do, you can get through. And there are ways to do that. It's more than just going to church every day or a week and that kind of thing, but to really say, hey, you're the Lord of my life, lead me and follow Him. And so if you stick with Him, He'll stick with you, and you'll make it through.
Wow, see, there's nothing else to be said. That's it. Thank you for tuning in to London's Love, Care, and Share group. We talk about health and different issues and mental health, and I think we had a beautiful show today. Thank you, Minister Mel Mills, for making yourself available, and we hope we can get you to come back.
Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you. Bye-bye. London's Love, Care, and Share support group. Health, physical, mental, social, and spiritual.
SLT Inspirations is here for your specialty needs. Follow them at Oily Editor on Instagram. Refining books one edit at a time. Refining health and wellness one drop at a time. Contact them direct at inspireslt.slt@gmail.com or visit them online at sltllc.com. Also available, Gathering the Fragments, The Will and the Kill. Available now by S.L. Taylor. Get your copy right now on Amazon Kindle.
Tune in to CBiz Media Podcasts. Can be heard at cbiztvonline.com. Also, CBiz Media Podcasts, The T, and other programs can be seen on Comcast video style on Saturdays at 10 a.m. on Channel 90 in Detroit, Western Wayne, West Oakland, and Macomb counties. Also, tune in to Sister to Sister Ministries on Comcast every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. on Comcast at 10 a.m. Channel 20.
is all yours. So what are you going to do? You better think it through before you make your move into temptation. Ooh, everything is handed to you on a silver platter. Whether it's right or wrong, it just don't matter. It just don't matter no more. 'Cause you gotta have it. You gotta have it right now. That's temptation. Might at the top, you might come falling down, might come tumbling down, right to the ground. If you ever fall into the hands of temptation, money and fame, a part of the game. The question is, what should you do? What should you do? Take it? Should you give it? Should you move it? Should you fake it?